focus. Those things aren't the focus of the story, but we still want to have the sequence of events that lead us to the attack. So what I think I want to do is sort of go through what your opening is, and then I'm going to talk about, if I was doing it, what my thought process would be. So that way it helps, because I know that right now you're still working off of an outline. And what you want to start doing is thinking about how can you do this without an outline. And a large part of it is starting to simplify some of the concepts. So in terms of thought process, one of the first things I would do before I'm about to give it is think about all the stuff I need set up. So one of the things I notice is that when you're using this diagram, you're taller than I am, but still nevertheless, it's too low for you, right?
Yeah.
And so when you're doing this, it's too low. So you want it a little bit higher. And so these are all things that I would actually think about before we get started. It's like, where do I want this? And I'm going to start adjusting this to make sure that I know where it will be. And that it's level. So one of the other things I noticed is it wasn't level when you're using it. So I want to know, all right, so this is how high I want it, because now it's at my level, right? For you, maybe a little bit taller, maybe not, maybe this is good enough for you. But nevertheless, all of these things I want to think about. I also want to think about who's going to be looking at all of this. I mean, I want the judge to sort of see it only because they're scoring, and I certainly want them to see it.
Yeah.
Now, in a real trial, I don't give a fuck if the judge can see it. But for here, I do. So I want to make sure that from the judge's angle and from the jury's angle, everybody can see. One of the other challenges will obviously be, am I blocking the judge? So all this is before I even start. I'm thinking about where do I want position. Can the judge see it? And we'll do this. I'll do this with you in the room. I'll go sit up there. And I'll say, all right, let's put this out. Let's figure out where we're going to put everything. Because we want to make sure that we have all that down. The other thing to keep in mind is that the height disparity between the two of you is drastic. So, well, no, this is important, because when it's time for you to use it, you can't then all of a sudden remember, oh yeah, this is so high. We have to remember, all right, when you're done with it, put it down. Or whoever's going to use it next, make sure it's set up for that. All right, so I'm thinking about this, all right, I've got the angle, I've got that. All right, so now I can take this down, because I'm not going to use this right away, and I don't necessarily want to show it to them, so I figure out where I'm going to put it. I'll put it right here, that's fine. Got that set up, I know where I want it to be, it's all good to go. I've got a juror right here, and I've got a juror right here. So I know that at my extreme, I can go here with this, an angle like this, or I can go all the way over here, an angle like this. I know where it is, and then I also know where my center point is. This is all the thought process. I know my center point's right here. So I'll start here, and then depending on what my outline is, I'll figure out where I'm going to go from everything else. So the story, I'm going to start right here. And then I'm going to want to talk about spring. So I'm going to go over to one of these sides. So I'm going to start talking about spring. And then I realize that I'm going to talk about my client next after spring. Client's over there. So I'm going to start transitioning over and talk about my client. And now I want to tell you what happened to them. And I'll come back in the center. Let's talk about what happened. And what I want to make sure I get through is that who my client is, who the defendant is, and the sequence of events. So if I remember anything, I want to talk about who my client is, who the defendant is, and all of that. So I don't necessarily need the details about what Chatham is, because I know I'll talk about that later. I don't necessarily need a lot of those details, but I do need to know who my client is, who the defendant is, and what happened. Then I know I'll talk about the case, the claim, suing for negligence, and all that. And the only thing I want to make sure I get out is responsibility. That they're responsible for this accident. If I say responsible, no matter what else I say, I'm okay with that. All right? But I don't want to talk too much. So I want to make sure, get out responsible. If I say something else, that's okay. But as long as I get responsible out, it's okay. This is my thought process before starting. Point number one, all right, I have my roadmap. And I want to make sure I've memorized up to this point what my 2 points are. So point number one is the defendant's store was open to the public. And point number two is that the defendant didn't have adequate security, right?
Yep.
Okay. So point number one, I'm thinking the plaintiff will tell you the whole time. The plaintiff will tell you, the plaintiff will tell you. So the whole time in my head, I'm thinking the plaintiff will tell you. and I care about what the nature of the game is for two things, 24 hours and rarity. Then I care about the ad, and I'll let the ad decide what I'm going to say, and all I care about is chase place and rare. And then to finish it, I want to say they told them to be on the sidewalk, and they didn't say you can't play the game. So you notice how I've broken that down. I know there's a lot of things to say, but in my head, I've simplified it. The plaintiff will say, so everything, plaintiff will say, and 3 steps.
Yeah.
Game, ad, where she was. Okay? Then point number 2, I'm going to think expert will tell me. Expert. And I know I got to introduce the expert, who the expert is. The expert will tell me, and I'm going to simplify this again. Expert's going to tell me 2 things, cameras and staff. And then for each one of those, I'm going to use a simple formula. What is it? What actually happened, and was that enough?
Yeah.
So expert will tell me we need cameras and lights. Expert will tell us that the cameras are for this purpose. The expert will tell us this is where the cameras were. The expert will tell us that the cameras were not sufficient because. Next one, lights. Expert will tell us what lights are for, or not lights, staff.
Yeah.
What the staff is for. The expert will tell us what the staff was, and the expert will tell us why that wasn't enough. And then I'm done with point number 2. And then I reintroduce my theme, which is the springtime. And the way that I would do this, and this is more of a prep thing, because when you want to end it out, you really want to hit out with a good head of steam with it. So I think ultimately it's now Miss Daly will tell you that this was bad, or that Miss Daly will tell you that she had an expectation to go to college. She had all those things that I think you put at the beginning. Save it for the end. She's going to tell you about how she expected to go to college. She expected to have, her spring beginnings. But you'll hear that because of 2 very simple things, like a camera and 1 more staff person, that because those 2 things were missing, as of today, still hasn't been able to go to college. And as of today, still hasn't been able to get her life started. And that's why we're going to ask you to hold it responsible. So that's my thought process going through it, and then I'll sort of show you how that all works out going into it. And so in terms of key hand gestures, I'm certainly going to be knowing points number 1 and 2, point 1, point 2. And then when I go into each one, so there are 2 points, 1, 2. And then when I do each one, so as the point number 1, as the point number 2. So that way I'm sort of ticking them off as we go.
Yeah.
And then for cameras and lights, I might do something like this. They're going to tell you there are 2 things you need to know. And I don't want to use numbers again like that, because that's going to confuse them. Because we already did numbers, and we want to keep them on track with that. So instead, I'm going to say there are going to be 2 things that they need. They need cameras and they need lights, or they need staff. And in terms of the ending of point number 1, I'm probably going to do some sort of transition from places, because I won't have the map until point number 2. So we're not going to be using the map to say store, parking lot, sidewalk, right? Because I don't have that yet. I'm not going to use that yet.
Yeah.
So I might use my motion here, that they started in the store, we told them to go to the parking lot, and from the parking lot they told them to go to the sidewalk, right? And I'll use me to sort of say one spot to the next spot to the next spot. And those are the key gestures that I'll think about. My points, the point number 2, and then this motion for the very end of point number 1. All right? Ladies and gentlemen, spring is a wonderful time. It's a time of new beginnings. We shed off the cold winter and have new growth leading into summer. And for people, you can have a springtime too. Especially for young people. Young people, they're moving from high school into college. And that's their new beginnings. That's when they're going to spring out into a new career and start an entire life. But ladies and gentlemen, you're going to hear about a case today where Miss Bobby Daly was not able to have her spring. Because back in June of 2015, she was injured on the defendant, Scooter Ice Cream Parlor's property. Now, Miss Daly is a native here in Steelton. She was born and raised. She went to Steelton High School. And she's going to talk that in 2015, she had just graduated from Steelton High. And this was the summer before she was about to go to college. And as you may recall, there was a big craze back in 2015, the Chase 'em Monsters game. And you'll hear about how she, just like every other kid back then, was playing this game. Now, the defendant owned an ice cream parlor here in Steelton. And they advertised themselves as being a place where you could play this game. And you're going to hear that due to their irresponsibility, Miss Daly went to Scooter's Ice Cream Parlor. And she went and started playing that game. And as the night progressed, never told, you can't play here. Continued to play, continued to do exactly what was expected of her. And then out of nowhere, a mugger came up to her and beat her unconscious. And you will hear how all of that could have been prevented if the defendant had merely installed one more camera and hired one more staff person. And it's because of that we have brought a claim for negligence against the defendant, saying that they are responsible for causing this accident. And if it weren't for the defendant's failure to implement some simple security, this accident would not have happened. And the way we're going to do that is by arguing two major points to you throughout this trial. First, that the defendant's store was open to the public. And second, that the defendant did not have adequate security on the night of June 5th, 2015. Now, as to that first point, that the defendant did not have adequate, or that the defendant's store was open to the public. And you will hear from Miss Bobby Daly. Miss Daly is going to take the stand, and she's going to describe for you what happened that day. She will explain to you that she was playing a game called Chase 'em. She'll explain what Chase 'em is. She'll say that Chase 'em is a game that you play on your phone. That the game involves virtual monsters that you catch on your phone, but you catch them in the real world. So you have to actually go to the place that the monster is located in order to catch them. She'll explain that you cannot catch them from your couch. You have to actually get up and go. And that the places that you go are called chase places. She'll explain to you how this game can be played at any hour of the day. And she'll describe that there's varying levels of the rarity of the type of monsters you can catch. You can think about it in terms of like baseball cards. That there are some baseball cards when you get a pack, you get a ton of them. You always get the same ones over and over. But you keep buying the packs because you really want that rare one. You want that Ken Griffey rookie card. That's the one that you want. You can think about it in those terms. And some of these monsters are like the Ken Griffey rookie card. All right? And she will tell you that one of the chase places that she went to was the defendant's store. Because she saw a sign when she went there. You're going to get an opportunity during this trial to see this sign. This was a sign that was posted in the defendant's store on June 6, 2015. Ms. Daly will tell you that she saw this sign when she went there. And she will tell you that it was from this sign that she learned that the defendant's store was a chase place, and that she also learned that she could catch a rare chase monster at the defendant's store. Now, she'll describe for you how, as the night progressed, she continued to play at the store. She'll tell you that at no point was she ever told she wasn't allowed to play the game. She'll explain that at 10 o'clock, she was told to leave the physical location of the store because they were closing that part of the store. She was told to go to the parking lot. And she'll tell you that she kept playing the game in the parking lot. And you will hear that there were many other customers in the parking lot playing the game after 10 o'clock. She'll then tell you that one of the store's employees told her to go to the sidewalk right outside the store. And she'll tell you that she continued to play the game right at that sidewalk, and she'll explain to you that at no point did anyone ever tell her she couldn't play the game on the sidewalk. Ladies and gentlemen, she'll explain to you that it's at that sidewalk that she was attacked. And that brings me to my second point. That the defendant did not have adequate security. Now, we're going to bring an expert here in for you today. Her name is Bryce Summerstein. And she was a former police detective with the Steelton Police Department. And she now owns a business security firm. And she's going to describe to you what is necessary for a business, like the defendants, with regard to security. She's going to use this diagram of the defendant's property in describing what is required to you. She's just basically going to break it down into two basic ideas: cameras and staff. For that first one, cameras, she's going to describe what cameras do. She'll tell you how cameras basically serve a deterrent effect from a security standpoint. The premise being is that as long as somebody thinks they're being recorded, they're less likely to commit a crime. And she'll describe for you that the importance of cameras then are that somebody would be able to see the camera pointing at them in order to be deterred from committing a crime. She'll tell you that there were only 2 cameras on the defendant's property the night of June 6, 2015. One right here and one right here. She'll tell you that based on her review of the record, Ms. Daly was standing right here on the sidewalk, right outside of Scooter's store. And she'll describe for you how these 2 cameras would not serve a deterrent effect for anyone coming up to Ms. Daly standing right here. She'll also describe what's necessary for staff. And for the staff, she'll say that you need to have enough people there to keep all of your patrons safe. She'll say that the point of staff is to make sure that either you're going to keep your patrons safe, or you're going to make sure they stay off the property. And she'll tell you that that night, on June 6, 2015, there was only one employee working at closing time. She'll describe that that one employee was named Christy Fultonova, and that she was a 17-year-old foreign exchange student, and that she did not speak English as her first language. And she'll also describe for you how Miss Fultonova had more responsibilities than just asking people to leave. She'll describe for you that Miss Fultonova was also responsible for closing the store and putting everything away. Ms. Summerstein will explain to you that having one employee there that night is not enough to keep the patrons safe or to keep them off the property. Now, Ms. Daly will explain to you how, even as we stand here today, she has not been able to go to college. Even as we stand here today, she has not been able to start her career. And she will explain that that was because she was attacked on June 6, 2015. And by the end of this trial, you will understand that that all could have been prevented if we had just one more camera, one more staff person. And because of that, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to ask that you find the defendant liable for negligence. So do you see how the thought process I explained at the beginning went directly into each step of what I did?
Yeah, and everything else you had the structure, so you're able to
Right.
fill it out. It was almost like a memo, almost like subsections.
Right, exactly. And so the other thing that well, none of you do is pause. Pausing is okay. In fact, pausing sometimes is really good. In fact, at the end, once you figure out exactly what you want to say to close out, you want to make sure that you hold steady for a good 3 count at least. Because what they want to do is get up as quickly as possible to make them forget about you.
Yeah.
You want to say, I nailed this opening. So I want every single one of those people to write down a 10 for my score before this person ever gets up.
Mm.
So you hold, and you hold on to them. So they mark you down, and then they can come get up.
So
yeah.
say like we will ask for you to find the defendant liable, and like when I said statement, then take the pause. That's it done.
Yeah. So I don't necessarily throw out a thank you. You can if you want, but if you do, hold them liable, and then hold it, right? And in your mind, 1, 2, 3. It won't be awkward. I mean, I did it, and neither one of you seemed to even notice that it was that bad. And if you want to do a thank you, then you can do thank you. All right? If you hold it too long, then it's awkward. But if you do 1, 2, 3, that's long enough that it's set in, and then you can say thank you. You can see that. All right? Let's hear the plaintiff's close. So, go through the thought process, and then we'll take this. All right, so what are the 3 exhibits you have? No, you don't use the ad. So yours is the police report and this?
No. Yep.
So where's the police report?
Do you guys have a copy of it? I don't have it with me.
Yeah.
Is it
It's
in this folder?
page 53.
This is the police report?
Yeah, I did the description, the same part. I'm gonna send it to Terry Val.
So we have the lead-in statement, what's your lead-in statement?
I just made it up quick, because it's in before, that not once, twice, but 3 times.
It's told to leave, right?
Yeah.
All right, so you told it, it's told to leave. So multiple times he was told to leave and you didn't do that. So you're working off of that, it's gonna be a male, at least for that close.
Yeah,
right?
because we don't know.
That's fine, you never know, so you have to change it for each one. So he's a guy, he's told to leave multiple times, so that's the lead-in statement. And then we have, that they're not responsible for 2 defenses, trespassing, what trespassing is, and then
Yeah, today.
comparative, which we're not saying comparative, we're saying that he was being negligent. And if he's being negligent, then the store is not responsible. Okay? The way that we roadmap it, what are the 3 points?
Plaintiff asked to leave, scooters had adequate security measures, plaintiff wasn't paying attention.
Okay. So, plaintiff was asked to leave, the defendant has adequate security, or scooters has adequate security, and the plaintiff wasn't paying attention. Point number 1, the distinct sections of it are, let's see, so the plaintiff was asked to leave. So the store closes, so we have that the store closes at 10, that the plaintiff was in the store, was told to leave the store. He went out to the parking lot, was told to leave the store, went to the sidewalk, and was told to leave the store, but he stayed, right? And then because he was told multiple times to leave the store and he just didn't leave, that means he's trespassing. So the conclusion, because I think you need the conclusion for it. It's not necessarily obvious why you're saying that until you say, because he was told multiple times to leave, and he stayed, that means he's trespassing. Sort of as a, we don't need a sign, we don't need all these things. He's
Yeah.
told to leave, that's how we
Yeah.
know he's trespassing. And that's also how you can say, I don't care that he was a customer before, that sort of invitation had been revoked, right? He was told to leave. The point number 2, inadequate security, we just kind of went through that. We have Noonan says what you have to do, Simon says what he did, Noonan says why that's okay. The point number 3 are he wasn't paying attention. So he was playing this game Chase 'Em. In fact, he had shown up at 8 o'clock and didn't even notice that it was 10 o'clock when he was asked to leave. He was playing for 2 hours straight without even noticing 2 hours had passed by. When he was told to leave, he went out to the outside, then the warning, right? And then he was injured. So then we say, so you're going to be asked a couple questions, answer those questions for them, trespassing, and was he acting negligently? Both of those are yes. And so then I want to share a story with you.
Okay.
So in terms of all of that, I think we have this, key gestures, and we have the 3 points. We have the moving from each place told to go. So he was in the store and he was told to leave. And then he was in the parking lot and he was told to leave. And then he was in the sidewalk and he was told to leave. And yet he stayed.
Okay.
Something like that. Almost defining. The other thing is don't point at the plaintiff because that's too aggressive.
Okay.
If it's a plaintiff, then you can gesture at them, maybe with open palm, not the back of the palm, but open palm. And that's a little bit more soft, especially if they're a little bit more sympathetic.
Okay.
So you don't know who they're going to be, but if it's a lady, sometimes some of the schools will train them to be ultra sympathetic, maybe even cry on demand. And so you're going to be closing that case, and if you're pointing them at like this, it makes you look bad. Even if they agree with you, and like, oh, you take it a little too far.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things is being a little more soft with the gesture at the plaintiff. All right. plaintiff was told 3 times to get off the property. And yet he stayed. And you can't do that, ladies and gentlemen. You can't do that and still hold the person who's telling you to leave responsible for what happens to you. And that's why we've raised 2 defenses in this case. The 2 defenses being trespassing, that if the plaintiff was trespassing, then Scooters cannot be held responsible for what he was doing. And that the plaintiff was also acting negligently. That if the plaintiff was not taking care of his own safety, that Scooters cannot be held responsible for what happened. And the way that we tried to prove those 3 points to you, to make them easy to understand, is with 3 arguments. 1, that the plaintiff was told multiple times to leave. 2, that Scooters has adequate security. And 3, that the plaintiff wasn't paying attention. Now, as to that first point, that the plaintiff was told multiple times to leave. You heard that the plaintiff arrived on the property at 8 a.m. or 8 p.m. And that he originally came there as a customer. But as soon as he got there, he started playing this game. And then, without even noticing, it was 10 o'clock, closing time for Scooters. And he was told to leave. He was told to go and leave. And he went to the parking lot. And Ms. Fultonova, from her deposition that you got to hear the transcript of, she told him to leave the property. And yet, the plaintiff and his friends stayed in the parking lot. Ms. Fultonova said, as you heard in her transcript, she told him to leave again, and he went from the parking lot to the sidewalk. Ms. Fultonova again said 2 or 3 times she had to go outside and tell the plaintiff and his friends to leave the property. And you heard that he stayed on that sidewalk and ignored those requests to leave. And ladies and gentlemen, being told over and over to leave the property, leave private property, and staying despite those requests to leave, that means you're trespassing. And if he was trespassing, then Scooters is not required to do anything more for him. He's responsible for his own safety. But nevertheless, Scooters did have security there. And that was our second point, that Scooters had adequate security. Now, we showed you this map. This is Exhibit 3 that you all have a copy of. And we brought an expert here, Quinn Noonan. And Ms. Noonan, being a 10-year veteran of the FBI and being a security specialist working with multinational corporations on their security needs, analyzed what happened that night and analyzed what kind of security Scooters had that night. And she told you that a business like Scooters doesn't need high fancy security, but only needs 2 basic things. They need cameras and they need lights. Now, Mr. Simons, the owner of Scooters, took the stand and described for you what cameras he had and what lights he had on June 5th, 2015. And he told you that on the outside of his property he had 2 cameras. One right here and one right here. And that these cameras faced into the parking lot. And he also told you that there were 6 lights in the parking lot. And Ms. Noonan talked about whether or not these cameras and lights were adequate. And she described for you what cameras mean. Cameras serve a deterrent effect. The point being is that it does not matter if these cameras are on, whether or not they're actually recording, but whether or not someone would think that they're recording. And she said for those purposes, these cameras being right here facing into the parking lot were adequate for the security measures. Remember, the entrance to scooters is right here. And these cameras both face anybody who would be coming in and out of scooters. She also talked about lighting also serving a similar deterrent effect. Ms. Noonan explained that if somebody is standing in a well-lit area, they're less likely to commit a crime. And again, these lights being in the parking lot that lead right into the entrance of scooters. And she said that these lights were adequate for security of a store like Scooters. And that's the important thing, ladies and gentlemen. The standard isn't, could you prevent any crime from ever happening? The standard is only, is the security, based on the type of business we're dealing with here, is that adequate? And having cameras facing the entrance, the one-way in and out, and lights in the parking lot for the entrance in and out, that's adequate security for a business like Scooters. And so that brings us to our third point, which is the plaintiff wasn't paying attention. Now, we told you that the plaintiff was moved from Scooters to the parking lot to the sidewalk. All the while, he was playing this game called Chasin'. A game that involves you looking at your phone so you can catch virtual monsters on your phone in the real world. As you heard, that requires him to look at his phone. And you heard that that entire night, from 8 o'clock to 10:45, the plaintiff was glued to his phone. You heard that at 10:45, when the assailant was coming, he heard from his friends. His friends called out and said to him, "Hey, there's some guys coming, and I'm worried about them. We should leave." And what did the plaintiff say? The plaintiff took the stand, and on cross-examination, we got him to admit that he ignored that word. He thought that that there were other players of the game, even though his friends said we should leave. Didn't even bother to look away from his phone. And then the assailant himself said, "I knew we'd find these guys here. These video game nerds." And again, on cross-examination, we got the plaintiff to admit that he didn't do anything about that. This whole time, he was still playing the game. This game that requires you to stare at your phone. And it was only after that that he was attacked. Ladies and gentlemen, when he was on cross-examination, the plaintiff could not tell you what the assailant looked like. He couldn't tell you what he looked like because he never even bothered to look up to see who was coming. And you heard that everyone else that was out there that night all managed to get away. Everyone else who wasn't glued to their phone managed to get away. And you're going to have an opportunity to deliberate in this case. You're going to be asked to discuss this case amongst yourselves and answer a few questions to determine the outcome of it. You're going to be asked, was the plaintiff trespassing? And you know the answer to that is yes. You know the answer to that is yes because he was asked multiple times to leave. And he didn't leave. You'll be asked whether the plaintiff was acting negligently that night. And the fact that he was staring at his phone tells you that he was. Now, before I end here, I would like to share a story with you that I think would help us all understand what we're really dealing with here. It's the story of the man in the storm. You see, there's this man who hears a radio report that a storm is coming and it's going to flood the town. The man says to himself, I'm devout, God loves me, God will protect me. And he ignores the radio. Well, the storm comes and it floods the town. And the guy's on the roof of his house and a boat comes by. And the men on the boat say, jump on the boat, we'll take you to safety. The man says, no, I'm devout, God loves me, God will protect me. And he sends them away. The storm worsens and a helicopter comes overhead, drops down a ladder, and they yell out to the guy, hey, climb this ladder. We'll take you to safety. The guy says, no, I'm devout. God loves me. God will protect me. He sends them away. The man drowns. And in heaven, he demands an audience with God. And he tells God, I was devout. I thought you loved me. I thought you would protect me. God says back to him, I sent you a radio report, a boat, and a helicopter. What the hell are you doing here? Ladies and gentlemen, the plaintiff was told to leave the property, was warned by his friends that someone was coming, and the assailant himself told him what he was about to do. What the hell are we doing here?